Nice to see you all, to see you nice and all that. Don't worry, the AGM won't last very long, hopefully, unless you've all got some awkward questions to ask me, in which case I'll be deferring to Alan and Sue. And then we can get on with Graham's talk on cable TV. I'm looking forward to this one, Graham. I haven't worked in it for a bit, so yeah, can't wait. So you all got notification of the AGM. Alan sent out an email a few weeks ago now. So we can work through the AGM. We've got an agenda on the screen for you there. Hopefully you all got your copy of the financial report and my chairman's report from last year as well. Lucky you for some bedtime reading, or at least you can use it to light the fire. So I think what we'll do is just work down what we've got here. Of course, you've got your council members present at the moment. I think we've got apologies from Byron, haven't we? And from Ben as well. But you've got myself, Alan, Sue, we've got Anita. Hello Anita, I haven't said hello to you this evening yet. Anita, we've got Philippa, and we've got John, and we've got Linda as well. I haven't missed anybody, have I? Graham? Graham. Sat there very quiet, then you're waiting, then yes, yeah. So, yeah, I see you there. So, council members are present, so it's only Byron and Ben who aren't here at the moment. Item 3, and we've got a few other apologies from members as well, by the way. Item 3 is review of Chairman's report from last year, which was in lieu of Chairman's report, sorry, for 2021. Which was in lieu of the AGM of 2022, which was the minutes. You all saw my chairman's report, so hopefully you are happy with that. Please don't point out any typos or grammatical errors, otherwise I get very annoyed. And were there any matters arising from that? Anybody wants to make any comments about that? Excellent, right, wonderful. In that case, I am going to hand over to Sue to give you just a little bit of feedback on the financial report, which you will all have already received. Sue, go on, you take the floor there, and
it's a little bit complicated because I left the 2020, which of course we all know what happened then, but so many had renewed their membership prior to us all going into lockdown, that we won't talk about too much. Which we're very much grateful for, and then memberships again, many renewed, not as it's good because there's some refreshments on there as well, of course. But we're very pleased with how many did take up last year, and it's looking quite good so far this year. And I'm thanking everybody that has paid so far by backs or cheque. And this new way is much better than £10 notes, and I'm wondering who did that one come from. And it's nice just to chat really, rather than be wondering where the £10 was that I got extra. I don't know who's most of the expenditure's been on the room hire, which is a bit extra to be in here, but I hope we've all got used to that and will continue this year certainly. It's not a great deal more, it's about £3 more a session to be in here, and there's more room. I think it's appreciated. But I'm hoping that we continue to get people renewing, because we do really need 40 members to be sure of covering room hire and speaker costs. Though we do have a good, healthy money still in our account, which is almost. It's very good really, because we've not had too many expenditures, and I'm so grateful we have so many members who are willing to do talks, and unless they say they'd like a donation to a charity, we've not got fees to look for, expenses, etc. But in the coming year there will be a few, such as Max Key next month, and Thomas, the guy's talking about Thomas Parker, the name right. These are good, and will be incurring a cost. So, if you know anybody who'd like to join us, I'm glad we've had some new members tonight, and we look forward to more coming, because it's great to have some new faces as well. And I think that's all. 'Cause I think the other matter has been discussed, and I'll speak later about that to the person concerned. But we have a little other something which I'd like to Simon to be involved a bit in, unless you want me to deal with it.
I'm happy to do that.
Yes, okay. I'd like to give you that.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, Sue. You present that. Okay.
All right. You do the words.
So we occasionally award an honorary member status for people who've gone above and beyond for the society. Anita is an honorary member. Byron and Joan Hooper are honorary members as founding members of the society. Monica Mann was in fact an honorary member as well. She was also a founding member of the society. But we've not awarded honorary membership for some time. But we thought it was very apt to award honorary membership to this person because they have always contributed to the society, are always first to get involved when we put out a call to the society, and you'll see them here at meetings regularly. And when we have our council meetings, they are one of the people who come forward with ideas first of all. So this person has not been in the best of health over the last few weeks, but it's great to see him here tonight. So, John, we'd like to award you honorary status of the society.
The broken leg.
And the broken leg as well. So, everybody, John Smith. Break a leg, and he literally did. So, John, it's all on you now. Okay. So thank you, Sue, and thank you for the report, thanks for preparing it, and thank you for delivering it. Has anybody got any questions for Sue on the finances of the society? Anybody got anything you want to ask? Okay. Well, thank you, Sue, for again your diligence in preparing the report. Again, some of you may not know Sue, again, founding member of the society along with Alan. And it is a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. That any of you who are involved in any of the societies know that it's actually the treasurer and the secretary who run it. So thank you again, Sue, for all your hard work. Okay, where are we? Annual subscription. So your council took the decision this year to keep subscriptions where they are. So again, no rise in subscription. And I think that makes it the 16th year that there hasn't been a rise in subscriptions.
That's called non-inflation.
Exactly, it is. Unlike elsewhere, I guess if we put the inflation on there, it should be about 400 quid each now.
Make the initial £10 would have been worth a lot more.
There would, wouldn't they? Absolutely.
2007.
Yeah. So, as you saw from the finances that Sue reported, we've got a good balance. That was looked after very carefully during COVID, and thanks to your support, we came out of COVID pretty much the way that we went in. So that's the reason why we've been able to keep annual subscriptions where they are. As Sue said, we've just got to be a little bit careful now going forward with speakers' fees. They're going to go up. I guess the room hire as well, we've got to watch for increases potentially coming from the council for the room hire. So we just have to be a little bit careful with it. But I know that Sue will keep a very careful eye on it, and if we did have to put it up, it's only going to be by a few quid. But at the moment, we don't foresee that. So nice to know for a tenner a year, you get all this. It's pretty good, isn't it? So do I have to take a vote on that or not, Alan? Because it was unanimously approved by council. I wonder if we need to take a vote. No. Everybody happy not to take a vote? Just go through? Yeah. Nobody wants to pay any more? No. Okay, right. So we can say that was passed unanimously. Nomination and appointment of officers. I'm pleased to say that everybody has said that they're willing to stand again. So we're the mugs and we're going to do it again. You are more than welcome to come onto council. We always welcome new blood coming through, new ideas. So if you do think that you could make a contribution, then please do feel free to come and see one of us, and we'll tell you what's involved. It isn't onerous at all. It's a half-hour meeting every month, and we do that by Zoom. So it makes life a lot easier. But we always welcome new ideas, new blood coming through. And I think as well, as Sue said, anybody got any ideas for speakers? I know that Michael, you've sent me details of one tonight. Anybody goes and sees somebody speak, please get the card and let us know so we can get in touch with them. Sue does a great job of putting together the speakers programme as well. So if you do see somebody who you think would be of interest to us, please do let us know. Everybody's happy to stand. Again, do I need to take a vote on that or not, Alan? With everybody standing, I don't think I do.
I suppose we ought to, because we're their servants. So.
Okay, fair enough. I am here to serve you. Is everybody happy for all the officers to stand again? If you can raise your hands, that would be super. Super. Michael's proposing it. I suppose I better ask for a seconder. Keith, you'll do. Right. Anybody opposing us standing as officers? Right. There you go. Done. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so my little bit now, as if you haven't heard enough from me. Alan's going to get a copy of my report, and obviously this will be emailed to you as well. So just bear with me for a couple of minutes while I read it out to you, and then we've done it all official. Basically what I've said is what a delight it was to be back together in 2022 after the intervention of COVID taking us through 2020, 2021 and into the early stages of 2022. Thanks to the diligence of all those on council, but again I'm going to say their names, especially Sue as treasurer and Alan as secretary. I'll put you down as chairman here, right? I must change that. Yeah, something I didn't tell you. The society's been kept on track and has, unlike so many other societies, unfortunately, we've emerged from the pandemic relatively unscathed. Understandably, members have tentatively been attending face-to-face meetings again, and it is good to see you all here tonight. And as we saw from the income we received last year, members are renewed, which is wonderful. We can start to get out there and build membership numbers once again. We had some great meetings in the last year. A really eclectic mix. We heard about curbs for buses, we heard about the restoration of Classic Mini, silver hallmarking, the latest advances in window technology. I've spelled that wrong as well, but I'm not going to read that out. We had an update on the children of Chernobyl. We heard about the story of plants, a spy mystery and a body on a beach. Phil Dainty told us about skin. Ian Sadler gave the story of the restoration of the steamship's Fresh Spring. Linda's been talking to us as well. She told us about dinosaurs, as we know, last month. And Alan swapped his secretary hat for his veterinary / physician hat again in the second part of his much anticipated talk on imaging. So quite a range of topics. And you'll see that this year we've got even more lined up for you. You've received the programme. That was emailed out to you. Again, let us know if you'd like a paper copy of that and we'll sort that out for you. So here's to 2023. Again, as I do every year, I'd like to thank all those on council for their continued support and all of you for attending the meetings. And again, like I said, if you hear of speakers, please do let us know so we can get in touch with them. So my thanks really go to council, they go to you as well. This is the 17th year of the society. Myself and Alan were just calculating and considering we kind of see the same sort of membership numbers, I don't think collectively we're all doing too bad a job. So please go out and spread the word. So once again, thank you. And I guess let's get on with the show. That's about all there is to say. Excellent. And I think that's it, isn't it, Alan? Yep. Wonderful. Okay, anybody got any questions? Brilliant. That's a nice, easy AGM, isn't it? Wonderful. That can happen again. Okay, right. So, I think it's your turn now, Greg.
Shucks.
Okay. Let's get that set up for you.
This side.
So, do you want that chair there or do you want to move that away?
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know Graham is also a council member, and you spoke to us last year on the restoration.
On my minute,
didn't you?
yeah.
So this is going to be interesting. Let's see if you can top that, because there was a lot of nostalgia there. As soon as they're going to be more nostalgia tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, great.
Yeah, back in the autumn last year, when Simon put out a request for anyone to do any 10-minuters, we were being sort of inconvenienced, I think, around the village by temporary traffic lights and holes in the pavement as guys were installing new fibre on behalf of Virgin and Zoom, was it, I think. And I sat there and I thought, well, having worked in the cable TV business all my working life really, sure I can talk for 10 minutes on it. So I said I would, and then I got nervous and I put some stuff together, but it was going to happen at Christmas, which we normally do then. But I was ill unusually, so it got deferred until tonight. I thought I'd call it a brief history of cable TV. And then I thought, well, actually, in this age of the internet and high-speed downloads and full fibre and Netflix and everything else, the actual phrase cable TV has more or less dropped out of our vocabulary. But what it is and meant, certainly then, was simply the reception of a TV channel or whatever at a central point, amplifying it and then distributing it by a cable network to anyone who was within reach and was willing to pay for it. It was a good way of getting a decent TV picture, certainly in the early 50s and into the 60s. And almost always it went with the TV was rented as well, because again TVs were not very reliable, having valves in them, they needed a lot of maintenance, and it also avoided the upfront cost and needing an aerial and so on. There was obviously in the beginning there was just one programme, the BBC. If you imagine that, just having one programme. I've lost my thread. Oh yes, they had a little feedback from the customer to whoever was sending the programmes out, unless he went off, and then you simply got to go down the phone box and phone them up or find someone with a phone. It's not going to be a definitive history of cable TV, because it's more of a personal journey really, which has been quite interesting for me, looking back to photographs and found out a lot of stuff on the internet. Do anybody remember Rediffusion?
Yeah.
Oh. What surprised me as I look back at it and talk to many people, particularly if you're under sort of 40 or 50, you say, do you remember Rediffusion? I look completely blank. And I'm thinking, this was a company, an international company, got depots all around the world. In the UK, apparently at its peak, it employed 13,000 people, had nearly 1 million customers. They built flight simulators, did background music, industrial communications, built their own tellies, operated loads of cable networks, and virtually a household name. And then something changed, and it disappears, and within 4 years, it had disappeared. So I'm pleased that a few people do still remember it.
Didn't they have the little box on the window?
Indeed, I've got a picture of it, which hopefully we'll see in a bit. I'll walk across there. Right. I started with Rediffusion at Wolverhampton in 1964 as a trainee TV engineer, modifying the cable sets so they would work on 625 to enable them to receive BBC Two. And if I thought about it at all, I thought the cable TV started around about 1950, 1951. In actual fact, having done some research, it actually had its roots back before the war in 1936-37. Television transmission started in London from Alexandra Palace. In fact, if we put a picture, I'll in a sec. But that had its roots back in radio distribution back in the 1920s. So if I go on to the first one, and this was a loudspeaker, believe it or not. This here is one of the later Rediffusion loudspeakers, which have just taken off the wall in my workshop. Hang on. So radio started in the 1920s, and then about 1922-23, a number of local amateur radio enthusiasts decided it'd be a good idea to start piping radio, initially to their neighbours, and they'd put some wires over the fence and so on. But then, of course, they have to get a licence from the GPO because they have the monopoly of wire distribution. and then you have to get permission from the local authority for putting cables across the road. But they did a number of places, Clacton, Margate, Ramsgate, they did so. And then some of them in the late 1920s were taken over by a firm called Radio Relay Services, British let's get the name right. Broadcast Relay Services. Again, the advantage of having a wired radio was that there was no upfront cost. You didn't need an aerial. And funny enough, I was brought up in Bradmore in my granddad's house, and I remember even then the aerial, big pole at the bottom of the garden and a wire down the garden, so you didn't need any aerial. And often, if the house hadn't got mains electricity, you need accumulators, which are a bit like a small car battery, and you'd have to take them to the local garage to get them charged up. And in fact, having been brought up in a 1920s council house, which we got electricity and a bathroom and everything, to hear that somebody hadn't got electric, you think, well, surely everybody got mains electricity in the 30s, 40s, 50s. But only yesterday, I was talking to somebody who was brought up in Ocker Hill, born in the early 1950s, and they had got electricity. But their nephew lived just round the corner in 1960-61. The house was all gas. And I thought, I was amazed that in the late 1950s, 60s, there were still houses with no electricity. So going back to the 1920s, 1930s, obviously wasn't unusual to have no mains electric. So if you wanted a radio, you'd need to have one with batteries in. As I say, it's not like a couple of AA batteries. These are about half the size of a car battery, so we had to take down the local garage or a hardware shop to charge it back up again. So wired radio service was a good way of getting a decent radio signal without having all the expense. And then in the 1936, television actually started from Alexandra Palace. That's a picture of the mast. That's obviously 1949, and that's a bit later because the ice cream van's there. But that's Ali Pally. Again, one channel, BBCO, in fact it was called the British Broadcasting Committee originally, and then it became the British Broadcasting Company, and then eventually it was nationalised, became the corporation. Again, just one channel. There were two systems. There was a Marconi system, which was electronic, and John Logie Baird system, which was mechanical, and they apparently transmitted them on alternate days. Eventually, the government committee came down in favour of the Baird system. The Marconi system. And that's what was established. So by the 1939, I think there were 23,000 TVs in use. Come September 1939, television stopped for the duration of the war. But radio systems carried on. They were quite important for news and also music while you work, for keeping the workers happy. And again, you didn't need a radio, you didn't need a main supply, and lots of towns had voice systems. Wolverhampton had one, and I discovered recently that I was talking to one of my former colleagues, and he referred to someone else that I knew. He actually worked for the company during the war. Again, you wish I'd spoken to him at the time, but however. And it was based at what became the Rediffusion showroom in Cleveland Street in Wolverhampton. After the... Hang on. TV actually started again around about 1950 in the UK. In 1948, got nationalisation. I hadn't realised that British Electric Traction, who owned a lot of tram systems, I think trolleybus systems, and electricity generation, they lost a lot of their business due to nationalisation. So they got a fair bit of money just going spare. So they decided to move into television. So they got quite a significant minority shares in Rediffusion. So their finance and their management expertise helped to develop Rediffusion. So if we move on. So that's the Rediffusion television. Another thing that happened was that there were a lot of ex-military men that had been trained on radar and so on, And one of the things they did was converted ex-military radar sets into televisions. So you had a 5-inch by 3-inch green television. A number of the men ultimately became the foundation of TV engineers, retrained as TV engineers, because television grew again in the 1950s. There was a need for engineers. I'll put these back in order. During the 1950s, the money from BET and the expertise enabled Rediffusion to grow and start cable TV systems. And I said they developed, all different branches of the company developed. They did flight simulators, background music, industrial communications, bingo halls, work events clubs. Associated with Rediffusion also ran TV studios and produced programmes. They did cable TV into schools and manufactured their own televisions. So I started there in 1964 on the modification programme for BBC Two.
What does that mean? Modification programme?
Oh, sorry. The TVs up to that point were on 405 only. So in 1955, the government changed the regulations to allow for commercial television, and ITV arrived in 1955, still on 405 and just 2 programmes. The network, the Rediffusion network, still put out the radio as well. At that point it would have been the home service and the light programme, and in the evenings we put out Luxembourg. It was only, I'm sure many of you remember Luxembourg on 208, and only receivable in the evenings. I'm sure Simon could give us an explanation for the ionosphere as to why we could only get Luxembourg in the evenings. But yes, the BBC, the television was on 405 only, so the television, 405 lines. And then in the early 60s, they developed 625 lines, which gave a finer picture. And BBC Two was transmitted on 625. So the televisions had to be modified to work on both systems. I was just working on cable sets. I was in the TV there for about 18 months, and then I moved into what we call the audio department, which with hindsight, I think, promised land really, because we did all sorts of stuff, not just television. So we did cable TV equipment, which what I tended to centre on, but we also did all sorts. We looked after the showrooms, lights in the showrooms, the big audio amplifiers. Where are we? That's another telly from 1951. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That's the 405 line test card. And that's got associated Rediffusion. I don't remember seeing that test card. And when I started at Retreat Street, this was the control room. It was mostly concerned with sound control. So can I use the pointer?
Should be able to, the top button.
Yeah, there. So these were the volume controls, are simple. And looking at it, this in the middle was a thing called a VU meter, which monitored the sound levels. And with these switches, we could, and the buttons in the middle, we could monitor some remote substations, one off the Cannock Road and one in Bilston. But because those needles there are actually indicating, I thought, well, it must be switched on somewhere. And I noticed down here, these 2 keys are up. So those 2 keys were up, which meant that this was in use. This was the answering machine of the dial phones, normal dial phones down the bottom here. Oh, I can't get it to work. And was he stopped? He's got, oh, there it is. And that there was like a duplicate for note information taking the service calls on. And that was the control for logbook. It actually says logbook on the front. These cabinets on the left, you'll see a bit more there, and these were the audio amplifiers. They're about 3 kilowatt, amazing piece of kit. And the stuff at the end, look, these were the electricity supply part and radio receivers and so on. Again, that's amplifier coming out of its case. Actually, if I just get here, at this point, there's not much left of the company, but that's one of the valves out of the amplifier, and the bit you'll see in a sec. Oh, that's me. Well, I pretend it's my younger brother because he's got dark hair, but that's me really. I'm pulling one of the amplifiers out of the case. I think at that point we were just dismantling them, because like many things, they eventually get to, if I go back, those are some of these valves when they're actually in use. The amplifiers had a main HT of about 3 kV, 3000 volts with a lot of current. You just need to be very careful with them. So I'd actually overridden some of the trips to get them, because if you open the door, which is on the left here, it would switch off. So I'd actually clamped something out, some G-clamp I think over the micro switch to get that picture. And then these are some more of the equipment. And then these amplifiers were replaced with those which were transistorised ones, which are much smaller, much more efficient, as you can imagine. The standby batteries at the bottom. And that's the switch that many people remember. This was the switch that would have sat on the windowsill, and it just chose one program at a time. There's a few more Rediffusion televisions. I remember working on, I wanted to get it work, the top right hand one, that was all modified.
My mum was manageress for Rediffusion in Bridie Hill, and we were one of the first houses where I lived, and we had a colour television for Star Trek.
I think the very early 1950s apparently gave a big, well, the Queen's coronation in 1951, 52. I think many people remember sitting around the neighbours or whatever and crouched around their television watching it. And not so colour TV arrived in 1967. And this, some of the pictures are my own, and some I pulled off the internet off a site called Rediffusion Remembered. And I was really taken with this one. I think this is outside the Black Horse on Thompson Avenue. I think the pub's still there, if I can get this to work again. But this, I think, was a friend called Brian Foxall, who became my boss subsequently. And the man at that end was Harry Williams. Again, I knew both of them. And I think I recognise a few of those. 1959 that was taken. And that's a 405 aerial, so there was a H version, and ITV I think needed to be X. And then 67 I learned to drive. This isn't the minivan that I did, but it's identical to the minivan I learned to drive on. And these signs on the side were enamelled steel, and they rattled. So they'd always got bits of newspaper stuffed down the back. And a wooden roof rack at the top. And this one's not very good, but again, which one's me? That's me at the end, and 3 of my mates in Mander Street, just off that's the road in the background is, that's the old Sunbeam building across the back, on the side of the Pen Road there. I think from the look like they're just making it into dual carriageway, I think. And again, by this time the livery had changed, so as you can see that we'd gone to the yellow and white. And with this building there with the 2 doors was where some of the other pictures were taken. That's in Bilston, and so there's not much left of Rediffusion now. But this building is still there, and that building on the left is the telephone exchange. Morrison's in Bilston is just off here. So I get an idea where it is. And we had some problem with ghosting on the pictures, so we were trying this aerial, and it was and trying to great big aerials on the top, and I think that's me on the top there.
What year is that?
I wonder what reg of the van is. I can't quite see the M reg, so about mid-70s, I think, 1975, something like that. And again, the same problem there. This was again in Bilston, so we hired the fire brigade hydraulic platform, so they're up there with some aerials. And I think somebody's down on the floor. There was a big piece, a long piece of wire came down here, 2 metres on the floor. Somebody's on the floor looking at, you know, saying, turn it that way a bit, turn it this way a bit.
Technical stuff.
Yeah, very technical, yeah. Just a few figures.
You're a lecture area on that side.
Sorry?
You're doing a lecture area on that side.
Oh, no, that's the colour test card,
Yeah, yeah.
which again, people remember. And 2 or 3 Rediffusion colour sets. And it's just reminded me actually of a little story from, I saw this picture earlier on, and it reminded me that a couple of my mates that you'll see in a bit, at one stage they were doing installations, disconnections, and you see these became a piece of furniture. People would polish them and put little doilies on the top and that. And they would get quite attached to them. And Tommy mate was saying that in Heath Town, when you got the deck access, you got long access outside with concrete floor or tarmac or whatever. And they were going to disconnect the television, and the people with the final polish and sort of say to it, thinking it was going to be passed on to somebody else, you know. So Tom said, we get it outside on the landing, throw it upside down so it's on its lid, and then just grab the mains lead and walk along. I couldn't even see they're going to give it the skip when they get back. But what the customers thought, if they looked out, I think they'd have been horrified to see their piece of furniture.
We went to other countries. Inventing tech.
And that again is another really,
Oh my God.
that's an aerial set. It's got the 4 push buttons, 6 push buttons down the bottom for the tuner. And then along came videos. They don't make them like that anymore, do they? Again, Rediffusion in Wolverhampton, we supplied inputs to all the flats, the high-rise flat, well, all sorts of flats. They had a contract with the Wolverhampton Council, which worked pretty well. But going back to the switch, it produced 1 programme at a time, which was fine if it went into a cable set, or into an aerial set. It needed a little thing called an inverter, which converted the HF signal back up to an aerial signal to go into normal television. But when you've got a video as well, people obviously wanted to watch one programme and record another. So then it needed 2 switches and 2 inverters. So at the back of the telly you're getting quite a lot of kit. But it worked, it was reasonably okay. Then along came remote control tellies, and you connect it up with its little single switch and inverter. And I think, great, I'll sit on the settee now and push the button and say, sorry sir, you've still got to change the program with the switch. It was getting much more difficult. And they're just in a picture of the van with a different livery. Again, that's was a bit historic. That's the Midland Counties Dairy in the back right-hand corner there. That's me at the left-hand end and 3 mates. The chap in the Paul in the dark shirt, that's became my best man. And that's when was S-Reg. I'm losing track now. But what did we do? 4 escorts. And a little bit later, we'd gone to a Fiesta and an escort. That's myself. That's again, it is in Retreat Street. And it's a bit more of the dairy. And then these pictures aren't brilliant, but again, it's just a record at the moment. Often the Rediffusion cables run through along railways, sometimes on telegraph poles, and in this case it was on the cutting wall. So that's actually, I've got my back to where Booston Station used to be. This is where the trains used to run, obviously. And a couple of, you notice no hard hats, no harnesses, no high-vis.
Nobody holding your ladder.
No, nobody footing the ladder. Yeah, and I think that was my car there. No, that's me on the right and Tom, my mate, on the left there. Again, on the railway.
And you did the graffiti as well, did you?
And no, not this time. Now, this is a bit of a funny, a bit of an in-joke, really. If you send a TV picture down a cable, it's a bit like water going down a stream. If it's smooth, everything goes straight down. Like the water runs down a stream if it's a smooth bed. If it hits a rock, it bounces off and causes ripples and so on. And the same thing with the cable. If you put particularly a radio signal down a cable, if it's a perfect joint, it all goes straight past. If there's a slight mismatch, as it's called, on the joint, some of the signal bounces off and goes back where it came from, then it comes back again. And when it gets there, it goes past. But by the time it arrives at the television set, it's a bit delayed by a few microseconds, and you can get an echo, a ghost. So if the cable is the same impedance, it was called the same type of cable, that's fine, but if there's a difference, they should put a little unit in there to make it look the same. But we haven't always got them, and you've got what was technically called a standing wave. So they are doing a visual representation of a standing wave. So Dave on the left there, we might hear, is pointing at it, and Tom on the right is doing, what's he doing? He's doing a standing wave. And that again is on the railway in Bilston. Just a quick recap. 1967, our colour TV. 1969, the TV licence went from £5 to £6 for mono, and £10 to £11 for colour. Rediffusion installed HF cable TV on the QE2. 1971 had 900,000 customers nationally, and they were the largest cable TV company in the world. And then I said about VCRs. And again, that was, of course, there were two different types. There were VHS and Betamax, which people might remember. Betamax was actually better, technically, I think, but VHS won in the end. By 1980, Rediffusion had got assets of 130 million, and we still put out the radio programmes and so on. But by the early 80s, the business was changing. Fewer people renting televisions, and again, I'm not saying hardly anyone who does now, but that's changed again because there's a thing called Sky Glass, where the Sky receiver is actually built into the telly, so people do rent tellies again. By the early 1990s, the business was changing, and BET, in 1983, BET bought the rest of the shares in Rediffusion. And 1984, decided to pull out of electronics. They split the company up and sold it off. So the television side was sold to Granada. So the Rediffusion name disappeared overnight. And all the other players were seeing the management buyouts, the TV factory was closed down, the flight simulator was sold off. And the bit I worked on, which was the cable side, we carried on for a bit. We've carried on for quite a while in Wolverhampton because we still had the contract with the council. But in the autumn of '84, it was sold to Robert Maxwell, became Maxwell Cable TV. But in fact, in Wolverhampton, it more or less carries on because we had the contract getting smaller. There were 10 of us still employed, and we knew we were overstaffed. And they had about the January, February, I think they had a meeting and made exactly half the staff redundant. So I was an engineer. Overnight, I was given a ladder and a meter and said, "You're outside." Oh, that was awful. It was cold and wet that year, and by the spring, I just had enough. But then the sun started shining, and you get to know the customers. Actually, it was fun. I saw it and we enjoyed it. That carried on then until Robert Maxwell died, in which case we were sold again. I'll just see what's next. This is still just some shots on the railway. You see, somebody's wearing a hard hat there. I'm getting a bit conscious. This was where Priestfield Station was, and still is. This is actually where the metro trams are now. The trams obviously run round here from under the bridge, from on the Bilston Road. This taken from my car. Oh, that's me. Technical there with the dark hair, and I just don't keep saying it's my younger brother really, but near the workshop.
And what year would you say that is?
Yeah. That was still in Rediffusion days, so pre-1984, about 1980. And there was putting up a telegraph pole, no mechanical aids, no big screws. The pole probably arrived on the top of the transit van, and you just hump it off, dig a hole and plant it, and then kick the dirt back in. This particular one was on the Newhampton Road, and I think it stayed there about a month, and then something changed and we took it out again.
Great.
This was one of the...
Great. When was that? So there's an escort in the background there. So when's that? Probably about 81, 82?
Yes, I'm guessing. I remember the car, I can't remember the registration number now. I can't remember what the other car is. That yellow one. Yes, it would be about 1980 because in '84 with Dave on the left there was made redundant.
It looks like a Line Flower Morris Marina.
It could be, yeah.
It is a beautiful car.
this was one of our distribution kiosks. The funny thing is that these boxes, these steel boxes, have different names depending on who owns them. We call them kiosks, but the post office, the kiosk is a red thing with a telephone, and on the railway they're called LOCs, an LOC, and the cable TV companies, the Telewestern, they call them street cabinets, but we actually call them kiosks. This one was down on the side of the canal in Wednesfield, and this was before I tidied up, so that's before I started, and that was afterwards. So it was a big improvement.
Do we use sorting out my message or?
Funny enough, some little anecdotes. I remembered that, so this was on the canal, that's the canal behind the fence there, and it was supplied by a pole route all the way down from Wednesfield, a lot of poles. And again, I think it was Tom, one of the chaps in the previous photograph, said that when they were putting it up, obviously the blokes had got to carry the poles on their shoulders, so somebody had the bright idea, let's tie a couple together and put them in the canal, and that float, wouldn't they? No, they didn't float, they sank. I presume they got a rope on them. And this is towards the end, this is my van, just a reminder of what it was like working outside in the winter. And this was after the winter I finished. Another little anecdote was, that a guy reminded me, this one I recounted this to him some while ago, which was that many years ago, I think the wiremen were taking the cables out to some empty houses, and they found a dog, I presume it had been somebody's pet at one stage, and they took a fancy to it, and the house was empty. So they actually took this van, and they strapped it on the ladders on the top of the van, and they were driving around town with this dog on the pig, pointing at this dog. And one other, which going back to the lack of main supply, we had these kiosks, which needed a power supply, and we had one in Molyneux Alley, which was down the side of the Molyneux football ground. I do remember set into the wall, and the electricity supply to it came a long way down this piece of conduit all the way down the wall. I didn't think anything about it, but apparently later I talked again to Tom, I think one of my mates, and he said when they installed it, there was a lamppost alongside it, so they presumed they get the electric from the lamppost. So they built it into the wall, and they discovered it was a gas lamp. You wouldn't believe it. So they run the lines about 100 yards. That's planning for you. Yeah, so you can tell where that is. It's Pony Road and Ashford Park, and that's about it. Where do we go? Yeah, after Maxwell died, the company was sold 2 or 3 times. In 1991, I think it was, we installed a system on behalf of Telewest, which again is a name that's disappeared, in all the flats in Wolverhampton, which in effect replaced the old Rediffusion system. And then we subsequently did a smaller, what was called an IRS, a very fancy name, integrated reception system, which is basically a satellite complete system in individual blocks of flats. And then I finally finished in 2000, I think, which was this year. 2010. I finally finished 46 years and I don't know how many days. And I said that I never thought that when I started at Rediffusion in '64, when 100 employees there and thousands nationally, that I would be the last man standing. I was about to switch the lights out. So. That's it. So not a definitive history of cable TV, but I hope it's been entertaining anyway.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay.
That was brilliant. Fascinating. So much to get in as well. How far we've come in such a short space of time.
Amazing. I've lost contact really. I've still got one mate, actually, I think I've got one friend mate in Leicester who works for the subsidiary Metro MDTV, it's called Metro Digital TV, and he used to work for Rediffusion. I suspect that he is the last Rediffusion. It always happens when a company disappears, you've always got a last employee eventually. So I think he's probably the last. But yeah, it has changed incredibly.
Yeah, amazing. Anybody got any questions, Greg?
Go on.
Because I didn't realise, and yet my mum worked for Teleffusion for forever. I didn't realise that cable was cable then.
Yeah.
So, but really they're still doing cables now.
Indeed.
So everybody thinks it's the fibre, but it's still cable.
It is, it's just a distribution system. In the autumn, when they were actually, the guys were actually around putting the fibre in, I went chatting to one of them, I said who it was, and I sort of doing this talk, I said, have you got a bit of scrap fibre? Yeah mate, he said, and it just gets this bit. So this is actually a piece of fibre optic cable. So I'll just unthread it. Yeah. So it would normally have a plastic sheath, another plastic tube over that before it goes up the pole or down the pipe. But those there, you can pass it around.
Let's try something a little bit of an experiment.
Yeah.
It may work, it may not.
It might do, yeah.
I think we did try this.
Alan put a torch against it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I can actually just see a tiny spot of light
I
there.
need to turn the lights off probably completely.
Yeah. So basically it uses a tiny spot of light.
Hold on, we're going to turn the lights off. Let's do it. Let's experiment. Well, that's not after all.
So that relates to all the lights that make the picture up on the TV.
That's right. Yeah.
Lowering
Do you want
it
to
down.
grab that up?
Yeah. Oh, yes, we can just see it a little bit there. There you go.
Gosh, that is.
Yeah, talking of the fibre, in fact, I discovered when I looked on the Rediffusion website
I'll
that
pass it around, rather.
Rediffusion were actually using
Pass it
fibre.
over and I'll hold it this side as well.
Rediffusion did experiments with fibre in 1973 and actually used it commercially in 1976. So it has actually been around a long time.
So is this the same fibres that they use during operations where they can now look?
Same principle, yeah, because then put a camera down it, just put a light down it. Yeah.
You have to get it just right, don't you? Wow.
Isn't it fascinating?
Everybody's seen it.
Yeah.
It's so simple, isn't it? So simple.
But you've got to start difficult to end up.
Yeah.
I mean, what's amazing with this, what is being transmitted down it compared with what went through your cable.
Indeed, our cable's just a copper pair,
Yeah.
and one programme per pair of cables.
And this is.
I don't know how many you get down each one. Probably dozens.
Megabytes.
Yeah, so you're probably into, what's the transmission bit rate down there? Great, those
I don't
Well,
know.
it's meant to be gigabyte
It's
speed.
gigabytes.
Yeah, multiple, isn't it? Yeah, you'd be.
Yeah.
Millions of bits of
You'd
information.
probably, I mean, I'm going to pluck a figure out of sort of, you're probably looking at 10 million bits down there
No.
compared to analogue of, would be about 50 bits.
Yeah.
Bits, something like that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it, if you use board and say 100 board? So you're probably about 100 bits compared to probably more than 10 million.
Incredible.
And yet the power consumption to send that sort of signal down those wires is probably tiny compared to
Yeah.
your 3 kilowatts.
Okay. Of course, that was the audio. The kilowatt was for the audio.
So
Yeah.
what did you do for a hobby if you were engineering all day? Because
All sorts. I'm involved with the railway. I'm involved with the Severn Valley Railway. So I've just got the 50-year badge. Very involved on
my
Severn
dad
Valley.
was an engineer, but he was a toolmaker. But he was an engineer when he got home as well.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
just never stopped.
Probably once an engineer, always an engineer,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Anybody get any other questions for Grant?
At 700
Yeah,
million.
exactly.
You won't
So
know.
I'm going to make the point that you made as well, which is that it seems that we've come full circle.
Simple.
Because now we're seeing cable TV going in the ground. I mean, we've seen fibre putting. I remember when Telly West were out and about, and I was then working at the weather department in Birmingham, so this would have been 92, 93, and we were asking Telly West, because we were working for Birmingham Cable TV, if they would lay cable in Womben, because it was one of the target areas, we knew the population, you could do a lot of experiments with it. And they said there is no way that Womben will ever have cable TV because of the cost of digging up every pavement and putting links into every house. And now you look.
What I discovered recently, when these guys were around Womben, they were actually using the BT ducts. And I thought, that's strange, because BT ducts, that's what's sacrosanct. But apparently the government changed their regulations not long ago. Did they call it unbundling?
Yes.
Which basically gave other companies like Zoom, Virgin, whoever, access to their, well, not just their ducts, but their poles as well. Now, who becomes responsible for the maintenance of the pole then?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No idea.
Well, I'll tell you a little story. OpenReach came to do some work on my broadband, which was getting very intermittent. And he said he couldn't go to the top of the pole with ladders because the guys who put the fibre up there had taken some of the steps off the top of the pole. So they actually had to get one of the cherry pickers
Hydraulic
in
platform.
order to get up the top of the pole and check the signals from up
Yeah.
It all feels a bit Wild West, doesn't it? It really is.
I mean, you can have your hard hats, but you
Yeah,
guns.
Yeah, just climb up, whack a monkey at the top. So when I was when we were doing this cable TV thing, I went over to Canada to see how the weather network works over there, and then went down to the States to see how the Weather Channel worked, because we wanted to do the same idea over here as cable TV, but a cable Weather Channel. So one of the things that they come up with was they did an insert, and it looks a lot like the racks of amplifiers that you did.
Yeah.
So this would have been in the late 80s, early 90s. So the cable went in, and then there was a computer that acted as an insert, which meant that we could do local scrolling weather, hyper-local scrolling weather across the bottom of the screen.
Right.
And that computer was put in there, and then that signal was transmitted alongside the picture signal to the customer's box. So what I was watching, I was thinking, well, that wasn't fibre, that was being
That was
done
copper pairs.
through.
Or might have been coax. Yeah.
So those cabinets that we've got in Bilston, actually, something similar could have been done. They're just interrupting that signal. Is that
Yeah.
whether that would work?
The Rediffusion, they use a twisted pair,
Yeah.
but again before fibre, when you had the internet, but before fibre, that would have been over a pair, a copper pair. So yes, that was possible to send pictures. The speed, the download speed would be slower,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was possible. I'm not sure what they used in the States. It might have been twisted pairs,
Yeah.
or it might have been a coax,
Wow.
a bit like an aerial. But yeah, it's copper wires basically.
Because
Yeah.
that we developed that was the crawler, then became the crawler that BBC News and Sky News originally back in the mid-1990s, because they used the same method for doing that. So it's interesting to know that that was how that happened, because I've always wondered, how did they manage to get that signal there? Wow. You've answered my question, Graham. Thank you. Wow. I think what we're learning is that actually technology is advanced, but not really that much, by the looks of things. Because what are we now? How many lines are we now?
I would course it's gone digital. I
Yeah.
think how it works now, and because 625 it was a scan the tube, the cathode ray tube. You've got an electron beam at the back,
Yeah.
and that scanned backwards and forwards, and it illuminated the phosphor on the back of the screen. So it switched on and off to get light and dark, and then there were 3 for colour.
Yeah.
There was red, green, and a blue, and they had to go through little dots,
Mm.
the thing with a shadow mask on the inside of the tube, with tiny holes in it.
Mm.
So the beam was switched on, the red, green or blue beam was switched on to illuminate just the colour you wanted. But they were still scanned at the rate of 625 lines. But how digital works, I think, because they were all LED, liquid
Yes,
crystal
yeah.
screens.
Yeah. So is it the equivalent like 1080 by 720?
That's the number of pixels. isn't
That's
it?
pixels, and so it's not lines, is it?
It's not
No.
lines.
They're like little square boxes
Yeah.
They do with tiny dots.
with the
Yeah.
dots in them.
So you can't compare like with like, can you?
No.
Okay.
That's maybe another talk for
It
somebody
is,
else.
isn't it? Yeah, the brain's firing off now. How does that work?
Yeah.
I was going to say
I said there's not a lot left of Rediffusion physically in Wolverhampton. In fact, hardly anything. Odd bits of cable if you know where to look, and some cabinets where they were built into a wall. That's how the kiosks, as we call them. But when we scrapped them, when we took it all out, most of the cabinets just went for scrap. But there were some smaller ones, which there was nothing wrong with them. So we actually repurposed them, and they went to the Severn Valley. So 30 odd years ago now they've been there. And again, they're called Loke now on the Severn Valley. But there were some other nice cabinets, but they did actually get a reuse.
Which one do you work at, Uncle? I want to have a look.
What was the thing? Oh, the other thing is the big amplifiers, the big valved amplifiers, had cooling fans in them. So again, when we scrapped them, I acquired a couple of the fans, and there are no extractor fans in my garage. So if I get a bit emotional, I'll go in and switch them on.
Excellent, brilliant. Anybody get any other questions for Brad? Yes, sir.
Yeah, so the properties that had the rediffusion, they were most likely council
Indeed,
properties.
yeah.
So, and it was a better service than having an aerial on your roof.
Certainly in the
So
90s.
there was quite a benefit to those customers then.
Yeah, it's certainly in the 1950s when television transmissions were lower power and they were different for the reasons of renting televisions. It was very popular. But you're right, it was almost entirely council estates because you would get a book permission from the council to put your cables on. They did do private houses, but there were not so many. You'd have to go across the road to them or whatever. But yes, mostly to be.
So, do just individual houses.
That's right. Yeah, yeah,
Well, I hate to tell you that I live in a council house.
yeah.
Off Bromley Lane in King's Linfield, and we got the rediffusion thing when we moved in. But the wire is still there,
Yeah.
and I used to grow my honeysuckle on it.
Good repurposing. Yeah, yeah.
It's still hanging there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, other companies were there were loads. Teleffusion, Vision Hire, DER, Derwent, Granada, and Granada itself has disappeared now. They were the subject of and BET. Granada were the subject of hostile takeover by Initial Tel Rental. So the Granada names disappeared as well. So business moved on, it disappeared.
And like you said, amazing that now Sky Glass is, I mean, I keep screaming when the advert's on, that's radio rentals. So it's come back. That's exactly
It's gone full circle.
what
Yeah.
they're doing. You've seen
Yeah.
Sky Glass, that they basically you pay monthly and you get the TV as well. Well, of course, you're renting the TV.
Yeah.
So it's just gone back to exactly this.
Yeah.
Which shows it was a great business model for the business.
Oh yeah.
Probably not so good for the consumers.
No.
Yeah.
No? Fascinating. Okay, anybody got any more? Yes, Wendy?
It's a silly thing, and I know you'll laugh,
Yeah.
but what's intriguing me is that I could see a smiley face on the
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's only when we switched it off, I thought, oh, you got one over there.
It's in the wall. It's in the wall. Yes. Yeah. You can sleep easy now. Graham's not put it in the slides. So Graham, when are we looking? When's that picture without the smiley face?
Was January 2010,
Right. Okay.
a couple of months before.
So that was the one we had the real hit of cold
Yeah.
December 2009 on it.
Yeah.
That was minus 21.6 and
Oh,
awesome that was.
yeah.
Yeah, in end of December. I can tell you when it was December the 18th.
What was it the next day?
2009. I don't remember the next day. I just know that night. Well, it was after it. I mean, this is after. That was a proper winter. So when people say we don't have proper winters anymore, yes, we do. We had one not that long ago, really. You know. That was cold.
It was.
It's a bit like outside now. That is. I think it's forgotten it's spring.
Must be called parking road.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Anybody got any more? Excellent. In that case then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming along. Can we show Graham our appreciation? Thank you, Graham. And our next meeting is Max Keen on... Sue?
Horatio Nelson.
Yeah, 20th of April.
20th of April on Horatio Nelson. It'll be brilliant. Max is wonderful. And let me just tell you as well, we have a superstar in our midst because Philippa is interviewed on Gardener's Question Time. I don't know. Next Friday?
Friday, 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock in the afternoon. She's on Gardener's Question Time. So you can say, I know her. She's available for photographs and autographs as well. Alright. Thank you everybody. We'll see you next month. Thank you.
I don't know. No, I'm not. I'm just it's that she knows about the weekly web.